A billionaire murdered, his killer still out there. Hey guys, it's going Dudey. I am back with another video. In today's video, we have the murder of a billionaire and his wife, Barry and Honey Sherman. Barry founded one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in Canadian history. This guy was so famous and popular and rich in Canada that the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, attended his funeral. But who killed him? So the thing with billionaires for me, and this isn't like a hot take, this isn't groundbreaking, okay? I feel like in order to become a billionaire, you have to do shady deals. There has to be some corruption somewhere along the line. And obviously that could be a completely ignorant and incorrect opinion, but I don't know what it is. I just feel like to become a billionaire, you must at least make some scary enemies. And that might just be the cause today. I mean, you don't really get targeted for murder, I guess, unless you've made some enemies. So let's take a look at this guy's history. So Barry Sherman had a 6-decade career in Canadian pharmaceuticals. But he was most definitely a controversial figure because his companies, his businesses, were apparently constantly locked in legal battles, sometimes up to 50 cases simultaneously, whether it be with rival firms, ex-employees, the list goes on and on and on. So obviously the list of enemies for this guy goes on and on and on. When he died, he was 75 years old and had an estimated net worth of £2.5 billion. This made him one of the richest men in Canada. It wasn't lost on Barry, the fact that, you know, he had these enemies, and also wasn't lost on the fact that he could be murdered. He actually said in an interview about rival firms who would employ private investigators to try and, you know, dig up some dirt on them. He actually said, why don't these companies just hire someone to murder me? I reckon you could get someone to murder you for $1,000. That is what this man said in an interview around 2001. Little did he know that 16 years later, apparently from the evidence that we have here, it seems that that was the case. So he literally premeditated or foreshadowed his own murder. So what happened? Well, his body and the body of his wife, Honey, were discovered by real estate agents who were there to obviously show people around the house to sell the property on behalf of Barry and Honey. Now, they were expecting the couple to be out. So when they arrived at the property and the cleaners let them in, nothing was out of place. There was no sign of struggle. There was no breakages, nothing. The basement door was unlocked, but that's normal. There was a window open in a room, but that had recently been redecorated. So, you know, air the room out a bit, get that paint dry, get rid of that paint smell, especially if you've got people coming around to purchase your property. So everything was normal. And then they went down into the basement where the swimming pool was, and that is where they discovered their bodies. This was on the 15th of December 2017. Now, on the decked area of the swimming pool, about 1 meter high, there was a metal railing running along the length of the swimming pool. And it was here that the bodies were found, belts fastened around the neck, tied to the metal railing. So, you know, did they both commit suicide? Absolutely categorically not. The post-mortem revealed ligature neck compression, which is completely different to hanging. The damage done to the neck when using your own body weight is completely different to how Barry and Honey met their demise. It seems more in line with strangulation than with hanging. Strangely, the couple were both fully clothed, but the jackets were pulled like down over the shoulders to kind of restrain the arms. But other than a mild bruise on Honey's face, everything looked like a suicide because there was no evidence, no forensics that show any sign of a struggle. However, because of that ligature neck compression, it was clear that this was not a hanging. So it was clear that this was no suicide. So what has gone on here? Well, the police department put 50 investigators on this case straight away. They combed through 2,000 hours of CCTV footage. They got in 127 witnesses. But after all this, they kind of figured that they were dealing with a murder-suicide here. But again, the ligature compression doesn't add up to the suicide. Like these people were both murdered. The funeral happened. Many people, 7,000 people attended, including, like I said, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister. That shows, that shows the level that the circles that this guy was in. He was high up. Barry and Honey had 4 children, and to say that they were not happy with the investigation is an understatement. So they employed a team of private investigators. They put up a £6 million reward for any information that leads to the arrest of the perpetrator, just to try and find out what happened to Barry and Honey. Now, obviously, these private investigators needed to look into absolutely everything. And they did, dig up a lot of dirt, and it was no mystery to anyone that, Barry had a lot of legal cases going on. He had for the longest of time, but it also was revealed, that he would happily work with people with criminal histories, people that have been to jail for fraud, some bad people he would happily work with, sometimes knowingly, sometimes not knowingly, admittedly. But, you got to make an omelette, you got to break a few eggs. That kind of mentality was clearly in Barry's mantra. And so this dark history just started unveiling itself. But as we said, there was a lot of good as well. They were philanthropists, where basically they would, spend a lot of money on charities and things. And it was known that Honey specifically really loved charity work. She was on the board for so many different charities. And this was actually one of the reasons why the timeline of when these two were murdered started getting a little bit murky, because police believed it was on the 15th. It was on the day that they were discovered. However, things started being a bit odd around 3 days prior. That was because on the 12th of December, Honey, who normally is at every meeting on time, loves it, she's there, didn't turn up. Didn't even give a reason why. So the charity emailed her to make sure everything was okay, and she just said that she was dealing with stuff. Very, very ominous, very mysterious, very kind of blunt and odd for Honey to say something like that. The same day on the 12th, Barry sent an email to his employees, and he was expected to be back at work 2 days later, the day before the bodies were discovered. But he never showed on the 14th. So that means that around the afternoon of the 12th, when the final email was sent, up to the discovery of the bodies, now you have a window for murder, not just the 15th. So let's talk about his cousins, because one of the big things, and to me, allegedly, possibly, maybe, the perpetrators behind this hit are the Winter brothers. To say this family were at war is an understatement, and the reason was Barry was a savage. So he worked for his uncle in the 60s, right? His uncle owned a pharmaceutical company, Empire Laboratories. He worked there in the summers, went and got a PhD in astrophysics, and in 1967 tried to buy the company. Now, let's go back 2 years to 1965. His uncle, the father of the Winters brothers, dies. A couple of months later, his wife, the mother of the Winters brothers, Barry's auntie, still following I hope, also dies, leaving the Winters brothers orphans. Okay? Fast forward 2 years, Barry has this PhD in astrophysics. He wants to buy Empire Laboratories. Now, he can, but there is a very heavy caveat. The caveat was, the condition was, the 4 boys at the age of 21 were given a mandatory job at Empire Laboratories. 2 years after this, they would be able to buy a 5% stake in the company, and they would get 15 years royalties on the 4 best-selling pharmaceuticals that Empire Laboratories sells. So basically, yes, we will sell you this company, but the sons of the founder, your uncle, must be looked after. So he accepted this, and before the boys turned 21, he sold the company. And he made so much money selling the company that he then founded his own, which was Apotex, which of course would go on to make him a billionaire. Now, because he sold the company before the boys turned 21, all of the stipulations that were in place for the orphaned boys was thrown out of the window. Now, of course, this pissed them off, to say the least. Now, of course, upon learning this years later, they filed a lawsuit against their cousin, Barry Sherman. A lawsuit, one of, 1,000 that Barry had dealt with. But this one was obviously a lot more personal than most. Now, 3 months before Barry was murdered, this case was thrown out. And a week before Barry was murdered, the Winter brothers were ordered to pay Barry $175,000 for legal costs. Now, I'm not saying that they were responsible, because how would I know that? But if I had to take a punt, you know what I mean? Let's hear what one of the brothers had to say about their cousin after he was murdered. I admit that I have utter disdain and hatred for Barry Sherman. He wronged me. He didn't honour my father. He didn't honour the option. He pulled a sleaze move. He stopped visiting me. He lied to me. He betrayed me. I have every reason to hate this man, but I had nothing to do with their demise. He also went on to say that he fantasized going into Apotex Laboratories, whatever the pharmaceutical company is, slitting his cousin's throat and rolling his head along the car park. So I just, there are many people that this could be, because Barry wronged a lot of people, but I don't think, and obviously I don't know this is unfounded, but I can't imagine he wronged anyone in such a way that he wronged his own family. But there we go, that's it. The case is still unsolved. They've still not discovered who murdered him. Police say that they have a person of interest, but this has not been revealed. Who do you think that it was? A close associate of Barry has said that he feels like someone came and made him an offer that couldn't be refused, and he refused. So, maybe mafia, we don't know. There's just so many shady characters in the history of this man, in the history of pharmaceuticals, that it could be anyone. But my money, it's on the cousins. What do you think, guys? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about this case? And what cases would you like me to cover in the future? Thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate you, and I'll see you very, very soon. Sweet one, geese.